It was early morning in New York when a temporary blackout blacked out part of Manhattan for exactly 33 seconds. Traffic lights froze, cell phones lost signal, and on top of One World Trade Center, a single light remained on. No one knows where it came from or how. Authorities said it was a technical failure, but no records confirm its origin. No alarms went off, no systems were activated. That same week in the interior of Israel, an elderly rabbi, respected for his visions since the 1970s, said in a low voice before his disciples, "The veil has fallen, and those who have eyes will see what they do not want to see." Coincidence? Perhaps. But if we look more closely, it is as if the world is making small cracking sounds before the final rupture. Reports indicate that the Earth's core is spinning strangely. Chinese and American scientists have confirmed it. It has stopped, slowed down, and perhaps even started spinning in the opposite direction. The seasons are changing behavior. Floods devastate deserts, and where there was once scorching heat, there is now ice. Nature, it seems, has lost its compass, but there is something even quieter and more alarming: the way people look at each other. Have you noticed? On the streets, in the subways, in the shopping malls, there is an emptiness behind everyone's eyes, as if everyone were awake, but still dreaming. Or worse, anesthetized. A generation that laughs at everything, but no longer feels anything. "The love of many will grow cold," said Jesus in Matthew 24:12. Maybe he wasn't talking about a feeling, but about a global atmosphere, a coldness that freezes the soul, an absence of light, invisible but total. While celebrities compete to be the most shocking on the red carpet, and world leaders exchange empty promises in front of the cameras, something much older and deeper is unfolding behind the scenes. The spiritual tectonic plates are shifting, and no one seems to hear the rumble. There are records, almost secret, of voices picked up by military radios in isolated regions of Alaska and Greenland. Sounds that resemble choirs, but sad choirs, deep, as if something were being lamented in the bowels of the planet. You won't see this on the 8 p.m. news. It won't appear on your Instagram feed between a meme and a little dance. But if you pay attention, you'll notice that the silence is getting denser, and that the days are getting stranger. Even children feel it. Parents report that their children have been waking up in the middle of the night with nightmares. Some of them say that the light is going out, or that there's something lurking out there. It's not a horror movie. It's a collective, diffuse, growing feeling, as if something invisible is approaching, and everyone deep down knows it, but no one dares to say it out loud. And while the gates of reality remain open, something, or someone, is about to break through. But where does it come from? And why are for now? In the next few minutes, we're going to talk about a real event that shook the Middle East, and that for some was just a war, but for others, it was a prophetic sign, an ancient warning echoing today, and that perhaps is connected to all of this. It was October 7th, 2023, a Saturday, a holy day for the people of Israel. As families gathered for Shabbat, the sky over the Holy Land was torn apart by the sound of sirens. Missiles fell like heavy rain, and armed men invaded borders, homes, and memories. The world watched in shock the largest attack on Israel since the founding of the state in 1948. More than 1,000 dead, families destroyed, children kidnapped. The war had started again, but this time something was different. The land of David was burning, and at the same time, a shadow was forming on the other side of the ocean. Exactly 8 days later, on October 14th, the skies of the United States went dark in broad daylight. An annular solar eclipse crossed the country, cutting through the states of Texas, New Mexico, Utah, and Oregon, tracing a line nearly identical to the Great American Eclipse of 2017. The two paths, overlapping, form a gigantic X over the heart of America. And in the exact center of that X and Little Egypt County, Illinois, a name that, in itself, carries biblical weight: Egypt. X, darkness in broad daylight, and blood on the other side of the world. The coincidences began to seem coordinated. In Luke 21:25, Jesus warned, "There will be signs in the sun, in the moon, and in the stars. On earth, distress among nations." And now the signs didn't just appear, they screamed. But there's something even stranger. As the eclipse passed through Utah, a group of Christians and Messianic Jews held a public prayer service outdoors. One declared on camera, "We are seeing the beginning of sorrows." Shortly after the eclipse, earthquakes began to be heard in previously silent regions, such as southern Texas and parts of Mexico. Tiny cracks, vibrating beneath the feet of an oblivious civilization. And then the questions that had never been answered arose. Even journalists dared to ask on national television, why did the eclipse coincide with the outbreak of war in Israel? Why does the X in the sky cover exactly a region called Little Egypt? And why does the world seem to go on as if nothing had happened? Meanwhile, in Jerusalem, rabbis declared that we are living in the Shevle Mashiach, the birth pangs of the Messiah. Some quoted Joel 2:31. The sun will be turned into darkness, and the moon into blood, before the great and dreadful day of the Lord comes. Others just watched in silence, as if they knew there are things that cannot be said out loud. In the United States, the eclipse was sold as a spectacle. Goggles, street parties, live broadcasts. But what many forgot is that, in Hebrew culture, solar eclipses are often interpreted as judgments on the nations, and especially on the Gentile nations. Israel was wounded. America was covered in shadow. Two events, two peoples, two intertwined destinies. Or are they just pieces on a much larger board? Meanwhile, a voice echoes between the lines of history, like an ancient whisper trying to be heard again, "And I will shake all the nations." Haggai 2:7. But what is being prepared behind this curtain of fire and darkness? Perhaps the answer lies in the forgotten words of an ancient prophet who saw the city fall and foresaw, centuries before, the days that were yet to come. He walked the streets of Jerusalem like a living ghost, unshaven, with a distant look, a choked voice. Jeremiah, the prophet that no one wanted to hear, called a traitor, a lunatic, a messenger of chaos, a man who wept in the streets while the people celebrated in their palaces. His words cut through the air like invisible blades. The city will fall, the walls will be torn down, the temple will be destroyed. They laughed, they ignored him, until the trumpets of Babylon sounded, and the laughter turned to lamentation. This story is more than 2,600 years old, but it pulsates now, with an almost identical echo. In recent weeks, as missiles sliced through the sky over Gaza and tanks crossed the border into Israel, a group of archaeologists announced a silent but symbolic discovery. Part of Jerusalem's ancient southern wall, dating back to the time of Jeremiah, was found tilted, as if it were falling, literally. A piece of history, hanging over the abyss. Coincidence or a reminder? As religious and political leaders clash in the news, and the world's eyes turn to wars, elections, and financial crises, few notice the silent signs. The walls are speaking again. Spiritual walls, moral walls, walls between heaven and earth. In the United States, a pastor was arrested for preaching against sin in a public square. In France, churches are being sold and turned into bars. In Israel, protests are growing against the attempt to restructure the justice system, dividing the country between tradition and progress. It is as if the same spirit that hovered over Jerusalem in the days of Jeremiah is now sweeping through the capitals of the modern world. A spirit of collective blindness, partying on deck while the hull sinks. Jeremiah wrote in Lamentations 1:1, "How lonely is the city that once was full of people. She has become like a widow." The description sounds like an ancient lament, but it fits perfectly with any large metropolis today, where crowds walk together but alone, where there is technology in every pocket, but an absence of truth in every gaze. In 2022, more than 55% of young Americans reported suffering from severe anxiety. In Brazil, depression rates have increased by 41% in the last 5 years. We have never been so connected and so lost. And as in the days of Jeremiah, there are voices that still try to warn. Preachers in the squares, prophets on the networks, ancient rabbis who speak in codes. But what do they do with them? They censor, they ignore, they ridicule, and when they cannot remain silent, they accuse them of extremism. In Jerusalem there is a stone, rarely visited, where it is said that Jeremiah sat to observe the city and weep. He did not want to be right. He did not want to see the temple in flames, but he did, and everything he said came true. Today, the modern world builds its own temples, ideologies, platforms, celebrities, but these temples also tremble. They also crack. They also make sounds that only the attentive can hear. What if we are once again at the gates of something that is about to collapse? What if the stones are trying to speak to us once again? I will call upon God, and the Lord will save me. Evening, morning, and at noon, I will mourn and groan, and he will hear my voice. Psalm 55, 16-17. But who is praying? Who is listening? Or is everyone just too busy-fied to realize that time is running out? Because perhaps the scriptures are being reenacted, verse by verse. And in the next act, something will be revealed, something what had been hidden from the beginning. The seals began to break one by one, and when the third one was opened, John heard the call, "Come and see," and he saw it, a black horse. Its rider was holding a pair of scales, a symbol of judgment, of scarcity, of control. And then a voice in the midst of the four living creatures echoed, "A quart of wheat for a denarius, and 3 quarts of barley for a denarius, but do not harm the oil and the wine." Ancient words, but they sound strangely familiar. Today, as you listen to this story, there are more than 735 million people going hungry in the world, according to the UN. In Venezuela, the value of a bag of rice is equivalent to 3 days' work. In South Sudan, mothers are trading their children for food. And in Europe, even rich countries like the United Kingdom are facing overflowing food banks. The scales are out of balance. But what, or who, is holding the balance? In 2023, the World Economic Forum will once again bring together global leaders to discuss a new sustainable food model. But behind the polished speeches and technological promises, something darker is taking shape. The concentration of control. A few companies, a few governments, a few names, dictating what we eat, how much we pay, and what we are allowed to grow. A new system is being shaped, with the appearance of progress, but with the bitter taste of submission. What's more, in several parts of the world, governments have begun to track the population's eating habits in the name of public health and carbon footprint. A plate of meat may soon become a matter of privilege or punishment. Food has become currency. Hunger, a tool. The scales are on the table, but it's not up to you to decide. And what does it mean to not touch the olive oil and wine? Ask the scholars. Some say it represents the untouchable elite who remain protected while the people suffer. Others see it as a separation between the marked and the forgotten, but everyone agrees. This scale doesn't just measure grains, it measures destinies. Meanwhile, nature also responds. Intense droughts in the United States and Brazil, floods that destroyed entire plantations in India and Pakistan. In the last 2 years, wheat, corn and rice harvests, the pillars of the world's food supply, have suffered historic reductions. In 2024, China will buy 70% of the world's stored rice production. Something is being anticipated, silently. And behind the scenes, an idea is beginning to gain traction. The use of state-run digital currencies to distribute food credits. More control, more dependence. They're a new type of scale, now digital. But the signs don't stop there. Last Easter, an unexpected drought hit Israel, affecting ancient olive trees in the Galilee region. For the first time in decades, local producers reported that the sacred olive oil produced for the temple ritual had dried up. Is this just a weather phenomenon, or a deeper symbol that something is being withheld? Revelation 6 is more than a prophecy, it is a mirror. And the black horse, silent, without neighing, without fanfare, is already riding among us. But few hear its footsteps, few notice its shadow, and even fewer understand the scales it carries. Because perhaps what is at stake is not just the economy, but the next seal, the next vision. And a woman somewhere in the world says she saw what is written in the book, and that it has already begun to close. She was declared clinically dead for 23 minutes. The heart monitor traced a straight, cold, non-negotiable line. The doctors were about to sign the papers. But when the team walked away, the impossible happened. She came back. But what is most impressive about this story was not her return. It was what she brought back from there. Her name is Ana Lucia Ribeiro, a 42-year-old Brazilian woman, a retired teacher, with no history of delusions or extreme religious tendencies. During an emergency surgery in São Paulo, her heart stopped. The medical team tried to revive her without success. Witnesses present say that she was pale, had no pulse and was not breathing. But when she came back to life, minutes later, Her first words were, "The book is being closed." According to the story, she did not see a tunnel, nor light at the end of it. What she saw was a golden room, full of beings that did not look human, but also did not look like angels like those depicted in paintings. Beings with eyes of fire, thrones surrounded by lightning, and a presence that silenced even thoughts. In the center of the room, there was a book, huge, like an ancient gate. Each time a page was turned, she heard a sound like trumpets and thunder at the same time. And then a voice whispered, not in her ears but in her soul, "Time has been shortened. This testimony is not alone." In 2023, more than 1,200 accounts of near-death experiences were catalogued in international studies. And in at least 300 of them, people from different cultures and religions mentioned the same scene. A giant book being read or closed, and a feeling of uncontrollable urgency. Science, of course, tries to explain how hallucinations can occur during cardiac arrest. They talk about lack of oxygen, residual electrical activity in the brain. But these arguments do not explain what happened days after Anna's experience. She began describing symbols, numbers, and expressions in ancient Hebrew, a language she had never studied. In one of the passages, she wrote something that, when translated, said, "And I saw the winds rising from the abyss, bringing with them the messengers of division." The sentence is almost identical to passages from the Book of Enoch, an apocryphal text used by ancient Jews to understand the behind-the-scenes of the final judgment. But there is an even more disturbing detail, a detail that connects this testimony to the real world. 2 days before Anna's story went viral on social media, the Vatican quietly published an internal document warning about the growth of unrecognized spiritual manifestations. The document cites apocalyptic visions out of context and urges caution with personal revelations that contradict official doctrine. But why such a specific document right now? And what exactly are these revelations anticipating? In Revelation 20 itself, it is mentioned that the books were opened and another book was opened, which is the Book of Life. What exactly is this book? And could anyone, among the living or the dead, see it being closed? The questions pile up. The answers are hidden between the lines, and the witnesses are increasing. Meanwhile, in a quiet room away from the cameras, a diplomat meets with religious and political leaders from around the world. Discreet, charismatic, almost invisible. He speaks of peace, but he carries in his eyes something that no one can name. And perhaps that is who we will talk about next. While the world is distracted by familiar faces, Biden stumbling through speeches, Trump between courts and platforms, Putin immersed in geopolitical strategies, and Pope Francis speaking of inter-religious unity in global forums, a silent figure emerges like a whisper between trumpets. His name rarely appears in international news, but behind the scenes in Jerusalem, Washington, and Rome, he is present. A diplomat, a polyglot, a profound connoisseur of the Torah and also the New Testament. A man of soft speech, discreet gestures, and an almost hypnotic charisma, a name that for now remains obscure, but that, for some scholars of prophecy, already raises an old alarm. In April 2024, during a closed meeting on Mount Herzl, the symbolic heart of the State of Israel, this man mediated a meeting between Orthodox rabbis, members of the Knesset, and representatives of different religious traditions. The topic? The reconstruction of the Third Temple. Public? No. Disclosed? Only with vague phrases like dialogue on peace in the Middle East. But a camera accidentally turned on captured a detail, a golden artifact being brought in secret, carried with gloves and reverence. Experts in religious archaeology, when analyzing the images, suspect that it is a replica, or perhaps the actual, altar of incense, a sacred piece from biblical times, and one of the central elements of worship in the Temple of Jerusalem. Symbolism, rehearsal, or something else? That same month, Joe Biden publicly announced his support for the creation of a multi-religious pact for lasting peace. The Vatican applauded. The King of Jordan praised. And the UN called for a new summit, with this same diplomat on the attendance list. He was there, always behind the scenes, always smiling. Daniel 8:25 says, "Through craftiness he will make deceit prosper in his hand. He will magnify himself in his heart, and destroy many who live carelessly. He will rise up against the Prince of Princes, but he will be broken without human intervention. The prophecy speaks of someone who conquers not by the sword, but by diplomacy. Now put the pieces together. A man with no public face, but with access to all powers. A transported altar. A peace plan involving Jews, Christians, and Muslims. And a world in collapse thirsting for order, leadership, meaning. Could this be the harbinger of a prophesied leadership? A prince who must come, as mentioned in Daniel 9:26, or just another name among the many dancing on the stage of the end? The Pope, in turn, surprised everyone by saying that all religions can find their origin in the same divine spark. Trump, on the campaign trail, promises to rebuild Israel with full force. Putin, increasingly messianic, quotes Russian proverbs with almost biblical overtones. And while the giants fight in the spotlight, this man just watches. He doesn't appear in debates, he doesn't give interviews, but his name is already on official documents of the European Union, the United Nations, and even the Global Interfaith Alliance, a group that, ironically, and seeks to create a spiritual ark for the new humanity. Who is he, after all? Where did he come from, and why now? The prophecies say that before the final revelation, someone will come who will confirm a covenant with many for 1 week. But no one knows exactly how, when, or who. The only certainty is that he is already on stage, and the spotlights begin to move. But as the powerful align and invisible alliances are formed, the skies also begin to change. And perhaps the next sign will not come from men, but from the firmament itself. The sky has always spoken, but what happens when no one listens anymore? In March 2024, residents of Iceland recorded something that defied explanation. Red, pulsating lights danced over the frozen fields without any justifiable solar activity. It was not the aurora borealis, it was something else. Witnesses described the phenomenon as silent curtains of fire. The government said it was gases released by volcanic activity, but those who were there felt something different, a chill, a heaviness in the air, as if the sky was watching. 15 days later in Colombia, an entire river changed color. The Guatapuri River, known for its purity, turned blood red for more than 72 hours. No industry in the area, no chemical dumping confirmed. The official explanation was rare algal bloom caused by climate change. But former residents said something that resonated strongly. When the river turns to blood, it is because something has been violated. In Exodus 7:20, Moses touched the waters of the Nile, and they turned to blood. A sign, a judgment. Today, rivers on 5 continents have already experienced similar phenomena in the last 3 years. What was once symbolic is now visible, and it doesn't stop there. In June, more than 10 tons of dead fish were found floating off the coast of Japan. Scientists claimed changes in the water's temperature, but local fishermen, seasoned seafarers, said they had never seen anything like it. It's as if the sea had driven the life out of it. In Australia, flocks of birds fell from the sky. In Portugal, goats were found dead in perfect drawn circles. In Florida, a strange sound, likened to metallic trumpets, echoed in the early hours of the morning for 3 consecutive days. The sound was recorded, analyzed, and so far it remains unexplained. Luke 21:11 warns, "There will be great earthquakes, famines, and pestilences in various places, and fearful events and great signs from heaven." Signs, heaven, earth. No longer words, but visual warnings, as if the planet were trying to tell us something before it screams. And in the midst of all this, in July, a partial lunar eclipse left the moon a dark, heavy hue, like a glowing coal. Some called it the Black Moon. Others, more ancient, said, "It's not the moon that has changed. It's we who have stopped seeing what it has always represented." Creation is in turmoil, but is it just extreme weather? Just natural phenomena, without any meaning? Or does it all form a hidden mosaic, an ancient message being repeated in the sky, on the earth, in the waters, for those who still dare to pay attention? Recently, a rabbi in Jerusalem wrote an enigmatic phrase on a wooden tablet and left it in the ruins of the southern wall. "When the sky moves without wind and the water boils without fire, the trumpet will sound without human hands." The phrase went viral among prophetic scholars. No one knows its origin, but many sense that it says more than it seems. What's going on? Is the world just reacting or responding? Because if these are just the first tremors, what is yet to come? Perhaps the answer lies in another kind of sign, not in the clouds, not in the seas, but in the human hands that have already sealed agreements, and in a voice ancient, solemn, whispering between the pages of an ancient book. When they say peace and safety, then comes sudden destruction. But who is really listening, and why? Now, at the end of all things, there will be no screaming. There will be silence, a deep silence, dense, like the one that hung in the sky for almost half an hour, according to the book of Revelation. And then, the seal will be broken. But until then, the world keeps turning. Governments sign treaties. Central banks launch digital currencies. Celebrities launch trends. Churches throw concerts. And the people, they turn along, as if everything were normal. But what if it isn't? In 2024, NASA scientists detected an unusual pattern coming from deep space. Gravitational waves in sequence, as if something colossal had been displaced or was approaching. A common phenomenon, they said. But something in the data alarmed a select group of physicists who associated the frequency of the signal with the exact rotation of the Earth, as if it were in tune with our planet. Coincidence? Maybe. But it was that same week that a pastor in southern Nigeria reported a recurring dream, a scroll falling apart in the sky, and a crowd tries to read it. Too late. When the seal is broken, this phrase has started appearing in graffiti, walls, videos, church services, even songs by secular bands. No one knows who started it, but it spreads like invisible fire. And the strangest thing, it appears in different languages at the same time in different places around the world. In Revelation 5, the entire sky falls silent before a book sealed with 7 seals. An angel cries out, "Who is worthy to open the book and break its seals?" For a moment, no one answers. Not in heaven, not on earth, not under the earth. That's the point. History no longer depends on opinion. It is written, and the final chapters are approaching. You can feel it. It's not fear, it's discernment. The world has changed, but it hasn't noticed yet. In Japan, a recent earthquake caused the seabed to rise more than 2 meters, pushing ancient rocks to the surface, with inscriptions that archaeologists can't translate. Some say they are pre-Babylonian shapes, others prophetic codes, but the authorities prefer silence. In Brasilia, leaked documents revealed plans for the creation of a centralized and mandatory digital identity system by 2030. In Tel Aviv, engineers announced the protocol for the reconstruction of the sacred altar, ready to be activated in 48 hours if authorized. In the United States, religious and technological leaders sit at the same table, discussing what they call the ethics of spiritual convergence with artificial intelligence. And meanwhile, in the shadows, someone is watching, someone who doesn't want the stage, someone who doesn't need a vote, just time. And time is what's running out. The clocks keep ticking, but the hours no longer obey the clocks. Like a hand that turns silently before midnight, something is about to happen, something that no algorithm can predict, no superpower can contain, and no soul can ignore. Because when the seal is broken, the eyes will be opened, the masks will fall, and the truth, which has always been before everyone, will be revealed with the sound of many waters. But is it too late, or is there still time? That is the question you need to carry with you. And while the world searches for signs in the sky, alliances between leaders, and answers on the screens, the greatest of all truths may be whispering in the silence of your own heart. The seal is still closed, but for how long?